And now I invite you to pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our salvation. Amen. By nature, I'm the kind of person who is absolutely fascinated with etymology, which is the study of the origin, the evolution, and the use of words. You know, the words we use today may have come and been used for something entirely different than how we understand them in this age. And so, let me give you a few examples. Bonfire, and we think of that big fire. Bonfire actually comes from the word bone fire. Pagan rituals or the practice of burning animal bones, or even in some situations in rituals, human bones. The word nice in the Middle Ages meant naive or ignorant. Clue was about a ball of yarn that was all tangled up, and it was used in maze for the person walking through to find their way back. The word teetotaler, we know that that's about someone who doesn't drink. We call them a teetotaler. But where did it originate? It started in 1836 in a temperance movement where an individual named Richard Turner, who unfortunately had a stutter and was fighting for a prohibition, when he spoke and said the word a total abstainer from alcohol, it came out to teetotaler, and it stuck. And of course, the word sinister, the sinister once upon a time meant a person who was left-handed. I don't know what to make of that, but obviously somewhere along the line it changed, right? So what's my point? My point is that to accurately say what you mean and mean what you say and read what someone means and then respond and interpret it as they did, you have to have a context. To interpret a word or a phrase, not knowing where it came from, how it was used, its context can lead to, bad advice and problems, misunderstandings, and miscommunication. Now think about it. When someone says to you, I'm going to go home and jump in the shower, do you really believe that they're going home to jump up and down in the shower? That makes no sense. But we use it in a way and understand it in a way now in our contemporary lives that we get it. But once upon a time, or perhaps in the future, that isn't going to work that way. Jesus in our story today, and this is similar, Jesus in our story today is separating the sheep from the goats. Now, do you know how sheep and goats are separated? How do you do that? Do you know them all by name, and so you absolutely know which are which? Or is there a difference in their appearance, in the way they look, how they act, and so forth? Well, the picture I'm showing you at this moment are pictures of a goat on one side and a sheep on another, and I'm sure you can identify them because this is the way they look in North America. But in other parts of the world, they don't look like this at all. In fact, they looked completely different and opposite of how we think they should look. So, what's Jesus talking about here? And how do we know which is which? And how do we know if we're one or the other? Because the metaphor is applied to people. And if sheep and goats, you can't tell the difference, or you say sheep look like this and goats look like this, and you blanket cover them as one way or another, how is that fair or right? People aren't always guilty by association, and certainly, though we may dress and look in a certain way or even talk in a certain way, it doesn't mean we're good or bad. I remember one time I was going to the hospital in Illinois, and at that time, and some of you may remember, I brought the car with me to Florida 17 years ago. I had a Ford Mustang convertible. And this particular hospital had parking spaces, and it said reserved for minister, reserved for clergy. And so I pulled right into that slot and got out, started walking to the hospital, and someone else began to accost me. You can't park there. You can't park there. That's not a place for you. And I just kept looking at them and walking, and when I got up to the reception desk in the entryway, I wrote down my name where clergy sign in, and I said, look, I'm a minister. If you don't believe that, call security now. Well, the security thing didn't happen, but it was kind of shocking. It's not like I was dressed in an outrageous fashion or, I think I had a tie on even and a sport coat. But my point is, something about me, and probably something about the automobile I drove, made this man think I didn't belong, that I was other than I was. So back to my point, we can laugh at that, but how do we get to that separation thing? How does Jesus do this? Well, the first thing to note is that unfortunately all of us make judgments, snap judgments at others by immediately looking at them. We have past associations and memories, and we accommodate opinions that others have told us about, wow, look at that person, and they must be so-and-so. My son, as a policeman, one time we had all his colleagues over for dinner, picnic one night, and of course, because they worked in vice and narcotics, there were motorcycles everywhere, and they had tattoos and long hair and beard, and I don't know what my neighbors thought. On the surface, they looked like one thing, but it was very inaccurate as to who they really were. What do they say? Beauty is skin deep. Well, a lot of things are that way. So how does Jesus accomplish? How does he separate the sheep and the goats? Let's go back to that. The truth is, a good shepherd knows the difference between sheep and goats by the way they act, how they behave, how they listen or do not listen. Sheep follow the calling and the voice of a shepherd. That's what they do. They follow along. Goats, on the other hand, they go wherever they please and do whatever they want. And don't we remember that Jesus once said, wait a minute, I am the good shepherd and my sheep hear me. My sheep hear me. There's the answer. The answer is in acting and behaving and what we do and the legacy that we leave behind. None of this should surprise us either, because all through his ministry and all throughout the Gospels, there are clues as to this same thing. Jesus not only says he's the good shepherd, but if you read the scriptures and the stories, you know that he is, not so much by his words or deeds, not by his words, I should say, because those can be misinterpreted, misunderstood. People can cast those aside or genuinely not hear them. But his actions, actions speak louder than words, we say. And Jesus, his actions certainly did. How many people did he touch and did he heal? How many people whose society had thrown out, tossed out, abused and discarded did he care for? How many times did he assist the people other people ignored? How many times did his actions rise above religious dictates and dogma, as he always put others first, setting aside even the Sabbath laws if it meant not helping someone. He never measured the worth of individuals, no matter who they were, by standards of the world, just the standards of God. Thus he could reach out to a Samaritan woman, a Phoenician mother, a Roman centurion, a leper, a thief, and a child. To determine how we should live, all we have to do is look at Jesus. No matter what you think about overall Christian thought or dogma or doctrine, or his stories, or, even his sermons, watch where he goes. Look at what he does, who he stops to talk to, where he invests his time and energy. This is what people remembered centuries or decades later. This is what inspired generations and has inspired generations for centuries. In fact, it's changed the world. Taking shape in the form of hospitals, laws that are aimed at preventing child abuse, child labor, slavery, making us incensed at human trafficking, shaping our nation, not just our churches. They make us, his words or his actions make us know that everybody is of value and everybody needs to be respected. And we practice that, or at least we try to practice it, by maintaining human dignity and human rights. And it was so inspiring over the years that when people saw these things, big or small, they said, there's Jesus. That's him. He's still here, doing what he always did in our world, only now he does it through us. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the church at Philippi, he reinforces or raises up this thought. He says, think of yourself as Jesus thought of himself. Though equal with God, Jesus never used that status for his own advantage, no matter what. Rather, he set aside the privileges of deity, instead living selflessly as a servant, serving others even to the day of his death. When talking about her mission in India, Mother Teresa always says that she started with the goal of providing a place, a safe, clean place where people could come and die with respect, love, and dignity. But what she discovered in time was when they came and received respect, love, and dignity, they stopped dying and instead began to live. And she continues with these words that I leave with you. If you judge people, you will have no time to love them. Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but believe their echoes are truly eternal. If you can't feed 100 people, then just feed one. And if we have no peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. Friends, I don't know why sheep listen to the shepherd's voice and goats don't. Possibly, there's some medical, scientific, physiological explanation. I haven't found it. I choose to believe that's just how they act, but they don't need to. They could change. In these times of division, in these times of verbal as well as physical hostility, in these times of self-promoting stubbornness that grinds everything to a stop, I think we need to remember this story. to hear this story and to adjust our lives accordingly. And by doing so, adjust and change and transform the world. Not by, not by what's going on around us, or not by what people of power tell us to do. Those aren't the standards Jesus ever lived by, but God's. Because, it's important, because if we don't do that, we trade away the promise of heaven while simultaneously creating a world in which we experience a hell.